And in other news tonight, the grandson of Ernest Hemingway, a writer in his own right, John Hemingway, has expanded into podcasting.
And good afternoon, everyone, or morning, or nighttime, especially if you're in China. I don't know if we have any sort of Chinese, viewers here, but who knows? Maybe they're just keeping tabs on us for the hell of it. All right, today we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about, Chris?
Well, seeing as I've already got it pulled up.
Yeah, okay. That's the cover of my new book, which I, as luck would have it, finished my first draft this morning.
Bum, bum, bum.
So it's going to then be reread, to find any sort of inconsistencies, things like that, typos. And then my wife's going to go over it again with a fine-tooth comb. And finally, we'll get it ready for Amazon. And it'll be up there in June, probably towards the end of June. Then, if you want a signed copy, and happen to be in the South Florida area, I'll be at the Hemingway Days Festival in Key West, commemorating my grandfather's birthday and his ability to drink and his ability to endure the heat down there in July. And believe me, I am not kidding when I say that it is beastly hot. Okay.
This coming from a guy who lived in the Mediterranean for a long time and now lives in Jacksonville.
Yes. Well, the Mediterranean, it's different from Jacksonville. Okay. Yeah. It's hot, and Italy, it can get very humid and all the rest of it. But I think Jacksonville is better in that sense.
It gets humid in Jacksonville too.
It does. It does. And we get wicked storms every day these days, and we have water spouts, which carry, Dorothy off and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
we have alligators, and we have crocodiles, and we have all kinds of snakes galore, and wicked-looking insects. And this is where Klaus Schwab should retire, because here he could eat all the insects he wants, or they could eat him. All right. Yeah.
We're not even 4 minutes in, and John's already pissing off the World Economic Forum. Yep. This is Hemingway's Parlay, brought to you in part by our friends at Papa's Pilar.
Yes, that's true.
You can find them pretty much anywhere, except for here in the great state of Ohio. Because
it's a prohibition state.
Fortunately, no, it's not a prohibition state. It's just the way the rules work. They're not even allowed to ship it here to Ohio if you order it.
Are you kidding? Why?
Now it's the way it's set up. Basically, it's like from what I've been told, there's 3 levels that three levels of distributorships or something to that effect, to where, let's say it gets shipped up from Florida to here. Let's say it goes to Columbus, because that's just the city in the center. And then it has to go to a distributor there. Then from that distributor, it has to be handed off to local distributors. And those local distributors then turn around and provide it to the retailers. And everybody has to be a separate and totally independent. Nobody involved anywhere can even be related. I can't sell it if I can't sell it to my sisters. If I'm a distributor, I can't sell it to my sister's store. There's all these rules and regulations and everything else. I've joked for a while that Ohio is the communist state, and I was wrong. It's actually socialist, but that's another conversation for another time.
Okay.
Yes,
So you grew up
our good friends in China are probably tuning in right now, going, "Oh yes, here we go, here we go."
in Ohio. We're going
Ohio.
to go
No,
Ohio
that's
next.
Japan. Yeah, which ironically is good morning in Japanese.
Sayonara.
Ohio. So now
Domo
to bid.
arigato, Mr. Roboto. That's all I know.
So tell me about this story.
This story is the sequel to the book that I published in June of last year and then presented at the Hemingway Days in July.
Okay.
And it's a noir,
Mhm.
and it takes off basically where the first book ends with the death of one of the characters. And one of the characters in this book, okay, Ron
Mhm.
Echeveria, is the brother of one of them who died. And
Okay.
it starts out with him receiving this phone call in Tucson, Arizona, I believe, and someone who knew his brother. And well, I think he'd been out bar hopping or something. That is the protagonist, Ron,
Okay. Now for
and
this
he
is the
didn't
first
know
book, by the way.
who this person was or anything. And then finally, he gets angry, and then he hangs up, and then the person keeps trying to sort of get in touch with him. And it starts out like that, you know. Ron
Okay.
Echeveria is, I think, your classic noir character who's kind of down on his luck. You know, his clothes are dirty and stinking with rum and whiskey and stuff like that. But he wasn't always that way. You know, there was a better side of him, maybe back in his glory days. And strangely enough, the death of his brother is a ticket for him to go back to his hometown, Miami. Well, he inherits the house that his brother had, who was a
Okay.
surgeon. And he also inherits, in part, the problems that his brother was dealing with all these doctors and nurses being assassinated in the first book. But it goes on from there, and he starts to see things in a different light from, say, his brother did. It isn't just such a solely a battle against medical personnel in Florida by the globalists, but it has more to do with what's happening in the United States. And he eventually comes to see that this is a fight, but not against the globalists. It's against our own government. And these books are two different views of strange period, I call it, which started in 2020 with the lockdowns and everything else that was going on there, and wearing masks and walking 6 feet away from each other and that sort of stuff,
Right.
and culminating in many cases mandatory vaccines, depending on where you worked, and then the problems that came with that. And that was the first book. The second book takes a look at what's happening in the southern border, for instance. There is no southern border. I mean, I'm almost 64, and all my life there was always a border down there. People talk about it, cross it maybe, wade across the Rio Grande if necessary, but at least, we knew that the Border Patrol was there, and they had their various machines out in between, say, where the Rio Grande was and the Texas border was. And so they would catch people.
Hmm.
And I remember once visiting a friend in Tucson, shout out to Jose, and he was taking me close to the border to an Indian Navajo reservation. And as we were going there, we were stopped by Border Patrol people, and they asked, where we were going, what we were doing, that sort of stuff, and asked my friend if he was an American. And this guy was in the Air Force and retired as a colonel. And he said, "Yeah, I guess I am." Me, looking fairly white. Forget about the sunburn or suntan that I perpetually have here in the state. But yeah, it was that. I mean, they had layers of interdiction, shall we say, against
Hmm.
people who tried to get across, and it was relatively manageable, I'd say. I mean, the Mexican government and the American government had a sort of a, what do you say, a entente, okay, regarding the number of people who were crossing the border. But as I said, it was nothing compared to today. Now I've heard estimates of 7 million to 30 million. That's Biden saying it, 30 million.
Hmm.
It could be even more. No one really knows how many people go across there every day and how many people are in the United States and where they are. All we know is that the government, along with various non government organizations, NGOs, and also religious groups like Catholic Families Services and Jewish Family Services, believe it or not, okay, they're being given lots of money to sort of ferry these people, okay, to all parts of the United States. And so this is something that Ron picked up on. He said, "No, we have to have a better look at what's going on here." And so he ends up in Chicago for a bit and starts talking to people there, and he finds out amazing things about what's going on in that city. I mean, Trump calls it uh, the land of lost Americans or something like that. In fact, in the sense that the government isn't doing anything for them, literally, and everything is being given to help the illegals. So this takes up a good part of the latter um, chapters of this new book, how he's going to deal with it, or at least try to sort of put a dent into it. It's a huge problem, and I've come to see that yes, these two noirs are a chronicle of what is going on in this country in a narrative way, in a fictional way, shall we say.
Hmm.
And with this book, I have come right up to the present in terms of what is going on. So, if you're interested in that and in a novel view of it, some of you, if you follow alt news, probably know all about this. But many of you, if you're following what they call the legacy media, perhaps not are aware of what is going on in this country. This country is, I don't, I don't want to sort of be overly dramatic or anything, but uh, I don't think they're trying to sort of replace the population. They're just trying to destroy the United States. And yeah, this book here, Ron Echeveria, is not about necessarily the globalists. No, no, he's beginning to see it as something different. It is not a civil war. It is not red versus blue state or black versus white or things like that. No, it's Americans against their own government.
Hmm.
And that sounds kind of bizarre, I'm sure, to many people out there. But I would say, one, have a look at the book, maybe even have a look at its predecessor if you haven't gotten to that. And then you can tell me what's real or what's fantasy. I'm not sure.
Well, having read the first one, which is actually not your first book, but having read the first one in this series,
Mhm.
it it doesn't open up the can of worms. It peels the lid back a little bit further. I think would probably be the right way to go with that as far as describing it. And I'm curious. I mean, would is there with this book? Then you're doing, obviously you're exploring. You're in Chicago. You're in a couple of other places, so you're exploring what's been going on. Are you looking at possibly putting a third, making this a trilogy? I
I'm
realize you
thinking
just
about
finished the second one this morning, so the last thing you want to talk about is the next book. But I'm
it.
just
Let's put it this way. I'm going to Europe and I'll be there about 3 weeks. I'll be in Italy, um, in Veneto, first off, and that's because my wife and I were invited to the 40th anniversary of the Premio Hemingway, which is a Italian prize for Italian authors and journalists who have written something at a very high level because it's about Ernest Hemingway, and so they have to be worthy of it. The first edition of it was held 40 years ago, and my uncle Jack came along with his daughters Joan and Margot. And I have been to the 30th anniversary and also the 20th anniversary when I was living in Italy. From there, I'm going to go to Madrid, see some friends that we haven't seen in a long while because of the lockdowns and the inability to travel. And then on the 5th, we're going to take a train to Pamplona and see the fiesta. And that is always very interesting.
Yes.
So I'll have a lot to think about or a lot to look at. And I'm wondering whether I want to do something, set in Europe or whether I might continue with the third edition of these novels based. No, but I can't really because everything is changing. First it was the lockdown, and then we have the southern border. God only knows what else is going to happen to this country.
We do have an election coming up in a few months.
Yes, and everyone is going to be happy if a certain ex TV personality. What was that thing called there? You're fired. Something like that. Yeah.
It's going to be it's definitely going to be an interesting year between now and we're recording this the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend in 2024. It's going to be an interesting year over the course, between now and Memorial Day 2025. It both in this country and the one to the north, because we're also dealing with some new sets of elections up there. And let's be honest, Canada as a whole collectively is probably the 51st and 52nd state of the United States. They pay as much attention to us as we do to us. And I happen to be up there a lot just due to my other job, and they're more than concerned about who becomes the next president or stays the next president.
Well, what was it they used to say? When America sneezes, Canada catches a cold.
Yeah. The Jamaicans have the same saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Canada is slowly but surely, well, they're not slowly but surely growing anymore. They're just surely growing. 5 years ago, they were at like 33 million people. Now they're almost at 40. And and they're not doing it, shall we say, the natural way. They're increasing because of the number of people that are coming into the country. I've got a couple of very good friends who were born in India, who they're Canadians now. They're moving forward. They're stepping up. They're making things better for their families, which was great and wonderful. But at the same time, it's kind of like, can you guys really afford all of these immigrants coming in? And they're having a hard time with it. I know we're having a hard time with it here.
Well,
we don't have the infrastructure. It isn't a case of we don't want everybody who's coming in legally. Let's not have that argument. But we have so many people coming in to both countries. There's not enough infrastructure. Healthcare,
for instance, housing.
Housing is a huge one. I have a friend.
Where are we going to find enough apartments for all these people?
Yeah. And to turn around, I have a friend who lives she lives about an hour north of Toronto. And the house that she bought she paid like 175 or 180,000 maple leafs for it. And it's now worth just shy of $1 million. It's mathematically speaking, things have doubled and tripled up there. And it's not because the value has actually gone up. It's just because both countries have continuously created money out of thin air. And so now everything is worth more of a dollar that's technically worth less.
Yeah, they've debased both currencies.
Yeah. And it's not just both of these countries. I mean, the Germans have done it. The British have done it. Well, the Germans are now the EU, but I mean, every country has done it, and it's gonna get interesting for the next year.
Hmm.
Thomas Massey this past week. Did you see that he put a bill out to end the Federal Reserve?
I'd be in favor of that.
I would too, but at a much lesser degree. He just wants to end it.
Well,
I
we can
think
get
if
back to what the Constitution, is talking about.
gold and silver. I don't
Yes.
necessarily know that we have enough gold and silver. I don't know that enough gold exists in the world
I don't
in
think
order to
there
be
was
able to do
anything
that.
in the Constitution about private banks taking over the money supply.
No,
No, I don't know how the hell they did that, but
it's the
it's there.
monster from Jekyll Island.
Mhm.
For those of you who don't know what I mean, just Google that. Trust me, you're
Just
going to find
Google
you you
Jekyll
will you will find a couple of books. The Fed was created literally in the middle of the night
It
on
was.
Jekyll
It
Island,
was, yeah.
and you're going to find a couple of books that are aimed at adults, and you'll even find one or two that are actually aimed at kids.
Hmm.
To help explain things to that. Yeah, I read one of those to my granddaughter, not to my
She
granddaughter,
fell
to my friend's
asleep.
granddaughter. And no, actually, she was reading it with me. It was actually kind of interesting. So yeah,
How
she's like,
old was she?
"Is
6
this
years
a
old?
real monster?" She was like 6, and she was actually,
What is this
and I'm
man
like,
doing reading to a 6-year-old something about the Federal Reserve?
it was a part of a series of books
Shouldn't she
about,
be reading things like
well,
Jack and Jill and The Hill?
well, she was a smart 6-year-old.
Ah, okay.
She was a really
Oh,
smart
she's old
6-year-old.
enough.
What was
Okay.
that? So. So when you get back, when are you coming back from Europe, roughly?
I'll be
Like the
back in Jacksonville on the 16th, and then we'll be tootling down to Key West.
I was going to say you're going to spend one night in your own bed and then
Mhm.
head down. Yeah, the Key West Hemingway days, they actually start a little bit earlier, but the 17th through the 21st is when all the festivities are really taking
Mhm.
place. For those of you who
Oh,
are
no, we'll be
interested
down
in
there on
joining
the
us,
17th for sure.
yeah.
I've already spoken to our good friend there, Tricia, and
Hmm.
she said, "Oh, well, are you going to do a signing?" And I said, "Sure, okay."
Good.
And we might even be drafted into the judging of the new Papa. It's just, they're one of the most crazy things in the world because every one of these Papas has their own team, who supports them and screams and yells. And this is all in Sloppy Joe's. And the atmosphere is hot and
Yes.
it's full of good drinks, whatever you want to drink.
Well, that's Sloppy
And
Joe's.
yeah,
The yeah, for those of you that are wondering, if you're new to the podcast, I am John, being a Hemingway. He's not allowed to participate.
no, no,
And
can't.
yeah, one of the previous Papa, or one of the current Papas, because once Papa was Ernest Hemingway's nickname, Papa is the title bestowed upon the individual that wins.
Yeah.
And Dave Hemingway is not in any way, shape, or form related to John Hemingway. But Dave happened to have had the last name. He was adopted into a family that had the last name Hemingway,
But it's
and he won a
relatively
few years
common.
back.
I mean,
It
common
is.
rather.
It is.
I mean, you can find it in people. Some people spell it with two M's. Some people spell it without a G. But it's all from the same, shall we say, um, Anglo-Saxon warrior
Yep.
uh, people who came from Germany and decided that let's go, grab us some of that wonderful English countryside with its wonderful weather. Well, anyway, where they were coming from, it's the same kind of weather, Northern Europe. But
Yeah. Well, we all get together once a year and we raise money for a scholarship fund. And we get anywhere between Well, I'm going to say as high as 200,000. There was at one time, but between 100 and
Really?
200,000.
200, you guys
Yeah,
raised 200,000 in 1 year?
yeah. Well, it wasn't exactly two. It was a little bit shy of that, but we raised a lot of money and put a whole bunch of people through college, through the community college of the Keys, and they were predominantly nurses as well as uh, people who are majoring in literature, who probably wind up becoming teachers. Let's be honest.
It's interesting because you have nurses. Okay, remember his first true love was a
Agnes,
nurse, Agnes
yes.
Von-Krowski. Okay, and literature. What was the other guy doing? Oh yeah, he was telling
Yeah.
stories.
Yep. And then and forgive me here, folks, I'm trying to I'm pulling up a picture over here so I can bring in um
Of
one of the
Agnes.
other things. No, unfortunately. Well, are there pictures of Agnes? Oops.
Well, yeah, you can look it up on YouTube
I know there's one. I've seen
or
him with
Google.
a dark-haired woman. I think that was probably her, now that I think about it, in his younger days. But we let's see here. Come on. This is not working. There we go. Okay. Pulling this up. A part of uh the festivities, in addition to everything that we do on through the week, is the there. Sorry, folks, trying desperately to make this work and it wasn't. Um
Yes,
yes.
they're running of
Saturday
the bulls.
morning. Saturday morning we do a running of the bulls. And this is our version of the running of the bulls. It's obviously a heck of a lot safer than the one that John's going to be going to a few weeks prior to that.
Yeah, and it's
But
also
yeah.
a lot hotter than the one that they have in
Yes,
Pamplona.
markedly so. And if you happen to be there, you have the ability, if you would like, we auction off the riding of one of the bulls, and you will get to be the lead bull for the year.
Elite bull.
The lead
Oh,
bull.
is that what this guy's doing here in the picture with the beard?
Yeah, actually, yeah, the lead bull, and it involves
What does it
it's usually
involve?
it's not cheap.
Not
Let's put
cheap.
it that way. There's usually a comma in said donation, but it is all
Okay.
yes, a comma.
So
Many,
basically,
many
everything is up
zeros.
for grabs,
Yeah,
so to speak,
yep.
if you
It's
have the
it's
money.
all to raise money.
Mhm.
You donated a book or two for everybody, and then I had you sign a copy of your
Mhm.
latest, as well as a box of Hemingway Fuentes.
I can't
And
believe that you guys were able to sell "Murder on the Florida Straits," that copy there signed by me. What
yep,
was it, $600 or something like that?
yep, we had one copy that went for $600, and then my little combination of the bottle of Blanton's Series
Mhm.
B, for those of you that are curious, that John signed when we met up in Michigan. And then we had the book that you signed, that was also signed by your son, who designed the cover.
Mhm.
And then the box of Hemingway Fuentes, which you signed, your son signed, and then your cousin Stephen Hemingway Adams signed. And that box, technically speaking, is probably considered to be priceless. I mean, whomever wound up winning that could probably turn around and auction that thing off at Christie's and make a mint, because 3 members of the Hemingway family have signed it.
Oh my God.
John's just like, it's me, it's my kid, it's my cousin. What? We just signed it. Big deal. For a true Hemingway aficionado, it's worth a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of an aficionado of myself, of sorts, but doesn't go much beyond that. Mhm.
Yeah.
Most people think
So
of it, yeah, rightly so. Mhm.
so if after Hemingway days, you're going to I assume the two of you are going to take a long walk on the beach with Hugo,
Mhm.
and probably not go anyplace for the rest of the year.
Let's see. What plans do I have after that? Not much, really. It's basically thinking about the next book
Okay.
or getting it going, or I don't know, something will happen.
Something like that. Okay. Well, between that point and between then and the end of the year, if all of my cards are right, I will be local to John. I'm moving to Florida myself. Once again,
you're moving further south, I think, than I am.
yes, a little bit. I'm aiming for Metro Orlando at the moment. I have two different positions lined up, so if one falls through, I have another one. And then, in addition to that, I'll be, of course, continuing to do the podcast here with John, and one or two other podcasts that I seem to suddenly be sticking my fingers into little by little. And my book will be coming out. I've finally got to the point where it's only taken me 4 years to write the stupid thing, but I'm finally at that point.
That's a proper time for a proper book.
You know? I hope it is a proper book. Let's put it that way.
Not I'm sitting right trash that I keep pulling out. You
know. Well, you're putting out about what one a year. I mean, let's face it. Neither one of us is Cheryl Rhodes. Yeah. But you're putting out one a year, and I'm hoping to be at some stage of the game able to do that. But you know, I don't have other endeavors impeding me. Maybe you and I can sit down and write one together. There we go.
This is memories, laying cables or something like that. Yeah.
John and I have the weirdest conversations.
Anyway, I hope those of you who really appreciate the intro that we have now will be also as enthusiastic on the second one, which Chris is working on now. He says it's shorter and less heavy metal.
It's just not driving as much.
It's true, because people get bored. You know, you have to present something new every now and then.
Yeah. Every once in a while, things have to change just a little bit. Nothing overly exciting. I mean, just every once in a while, things just need to change just a hair.
Everything needs to change.
Yeah, little by little. So, if you are interested in following John and his adventures with Hugo, his dog, you can find him over on Instagram. Let me put those back up here. You can find him over at Instagram at JHN_Hemingway. And if you care to really follow me, you can find me over at the CS Merchant.
I do a posting most every day of the sunrise here. And Hugo is usually with me, and he gets to meet all his doggy friends there.
All his doggy friends. And pulling up John right now. I can't get... my apologies, folks. I'm having all kinds of issues. We lost power yesterday, and my internet is now being destroyed little by little here. I'm surprised we've managed to stay afloat as long as we have here. I live in a building that is as old as I am, and one thing is leading to another. So, John, they can find you over on Instagram and obviously on Facebook. I have never asked in all the time I have known you, are you actually over on Twitter or X now, since Elon changed his name?
Yes, I'm on Twitter. I don't normally post there, but
okay,
I do have an account.
Okay.
I'm also working on getting up a website.
Okay.
So that I'll be able to send signed copies of the book for those who want them.
Okay.
And I'll also be doing, I have the Substack, but I've hardly done anything on it. Spending most of my time writing these books, but I think that it's useful, put in my 2 bits every now and then of Hemingway wisdom.
Why not?
In these crazy times. Actually, I should say that this is a privileged time for writers like Chris and myself, because you never really know what the hell is going to happen next.
No.
I figure, short of seeing mushroom clouds and everything, we're doing all right. It's pretty creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will look back. We will look back upon this set of the 20s as the 20s that your grandfather was writing in Paris.
Yeah, maybe his 20s paradoxically were safer than ours.
Yes.
At least they hadn't discovered the uses for the atom as they have discovered now. So,
No. However, mustard gas was one of those things that they kind of had to live in fear of.
mustard gas, yeah. Or you could have, so what are they called there? Moutarde, okay. The anchovies. Anchovy au moutarde or something like that. Yeah, I just bought some mustard the other day, so maybe that's where they get mustard gas.
On
I used
that
to
note,
love the anchovies that they would have in the mustard sauce. Only in France. You get it here and it's kind of limp. You know what I mean? It's really lame. There's no punch to it or anything. They've taken out all the mustard, and just left the yellow goo there.
now I'm curious, seeing as the Quebecois are still French, they just changed management.
Mhm.
Is it similar? You like that line, right? I'm using it in my book, by the way.
French. The Quebecois is
Yeah.
French. Yeah, they do speak French. I wouldn't necessarily call it metropolitan French, but they have a lot of their own words. They don't say voiture; they say char. Okay, for instance.
Mhm.
Okay. Mon ami, they say mon chum or mon blanc or whatever, things like that. They have a lot of English words that they use, and they use it in their own way.
Yeah.
And then they're full of swear words and things like that. Garlic, the bean, all that
Yes.
stuff.
One of the first swear words that I learned, and let's try not to get us banned up there. One of the first swear words that I learned up there was tabark.
Oh
And I'm
yeah,
like, what? And like
tabernacle.
tabark. And wait, what? And it's said real quick, and I'm looking the thing up, and it's like tabernacle. Because I looked the word
Yeah,
up. I'm like
because
tabernacle. It's like, no, it means it's based there. That's the
because
root of
everything
it
was run, by the Catholic
by the
Church.
Catholic
The school
Church. Yep.
systems, where if you were French speaking, you went to the Catholic schools. If you were English, bloke or whatever they called us, you would go to the Protestant schools.
Yep.
They weren't run by the government; they were run by the churches. It's,
And so
and so, yeah,
that word is now kind of the generic. Well, John, it's your podcast. Do you want to say it?
generic patois.
Uh, it's the generic word. I've heard it used predominantly as the word as the F word. I've heard it used as the S word, and I've heard it.
Don't f bomb on our podcast.
No, we don't F bomb on this podcast. At least we really try hard not
Only
to.
only our great vice president,
I'll
the
let
giggly one, can do that.
there's I'm trying to think. I've heard it used in some other way, and I kind of turned and I looked at him, and he just started shaking his head. He said, "It will lose so much in translation. You don't want to know." I'm like, okay, but it just it's kind of that catch-all word for them. But the food, however, I mean, I much prefer. I mean, granted, I'm kind of limited as to the restaurants that I've been in Quebec.
Well, there's some very good restaurants in
Mhm.
Montreal. Sure.
But I've been in a few of them, and the food is all I mean, I've never had anything from any restaurant or even like the roadside rest areas that that hasn't been good. Not the rest areas, but like the service plazas with the Tim Hortons and the Saint Hubert and everything else in it.
Oh,
Um, it's just the food is always good. And it's also interesting because they import a lot of beer from Europe. I mean, they have their own up there,
oh yeah,
but
they do.
I mean,
Absolutely.
their beer is
Quebec has
phenomenal.
many sort of artisanal breweries and types of beer. I mean, you go into any supermarket there, and you can really find some great beer.
Yep.
Not so much wine. The wine they have to import, except for what's it called? Ice wine,
Yeah.
which is good as how do we say it's a pastry drink. Yeah, goes as
Yeah.
well with cake and stuff like that.
Yeah. For those of you, yeah, ice wine is one of those things. I mean, I live in Ohio's wine country here. We've got the same climate as a couple of the regions of France, and it's a thing for us. We'll go, right as things start to freeze, and we'll go and we go up out to the local wineries and we'll pick the grapes and stuff like that, and then a couple months later, hey, here's your wine. Yeah, it's kind of a neat way to, it's a neat date. Let's put it that way. It's also late at night and there's a lot of coffee and it's cold. So, snuggling is
No, it's good stuff. It's not exactly what I would call cheap.
No.
But it's worth a try.
Yeah. On average, you're looking about $25 for a 750 milliliter bottle.
You could even pay more, I've seen.
Oh, you can pay a lot more than that.
Yeah. So, having exhausted everything that we know, regarding ice wine,
regarding ice wine and mustard covered, little fish.
The joys of spending 5 minutes, if it were only 5 minutes, 5 months, okay, in below zero temperatures. I mean, really below.
Yeah, Montreal is not
Montreal's
not fun in the winter.
Thanks for joining us this time, and I'll be in touch in about another 8 months once I finish the next book.
And we'll go from there.
We'll find some interesting people, not us, okay, to come on. And forgive us. He was busy with work. I was busy with the book. So now we can get back to our true love, which is entertaining all of you.
Yes, or at least trying darn hard to do so. You can find us once again over on Instagram, JHN_Hemingway. And I am the CS Merchant. You can also find us both over on Facebook. Just start Googling. I know I've got a blue check mark. I still got to talk John into that. That's another conversation. You all have a great afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, wherever you are.
And there we go. I keep pushing the button and it doesn't work. And now it works. Take care.